Welcome to the Obstacle Races New Zealand podcast. I'm Max Bell and I'm here with Stephen.
Hey, how are we all?
And on this episode we have an interview with Martin McKone, who is the event organiser of the Wanaka Dash. So we talk with him about the Wanaka Dash and what to expect from that event, and about his background, his athletic background, and how he got into OCR, different races he's running, and just some random chit chat as well about different aspects of OCR in New Zealand and other events, and thoughts about Tough Mudder and Spartan and these sort of things, and some other New Zealand events. And yeah, interesting chat.
It is, and he talks about NZOSA as well. He is part of the team there as well. So, and he also owns the Titans gym in Wanaka. So yeah, it was a very interesting chat with him.
Yeah, I think Multi Peak Fitness Wanaka might be the name of his gym. That was one thing I was meant to ask him about, was how Wanaka Titans fits into that. Because I think Wanaka Titans is the name of the OCR club.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I think so. I had it on my list to ask him, but we forgot. Maybe we should follow up in a future episode.
Maybe we will, yes.
So I think Multi Peak Fitness is the gym, Wanaka Titans is an OCR club, and then Wanaka Dash is the event.
Okay. Well, we should clarify that, because I actually thought his gym was the Titans. I didn't know about Peaks. But then these websites, I'm only going on what his website is for the Dash, which is Titans, or a link Titans. So. Yes.
We'll find out.
All right. What else has been happening in sunny, windy Wellington in the last few days?
Not much. Normal. Yeah, pretty crazy weather. Pouring down at the start of the week and then really sunny on Friday. Yeah,
we had a nice Friday and Saturday. It is raining outside now in Auckland, but we're at level 3 lockdown, so we're still stuck home, so to speak. So it's no big deal.
Yeah, damn. Well, I guess some news with myself personally. I went in on Friday, got some skin part on my forehead. They could potentially be skin cancer. It's bad news, but good news, catch it early. So they did a biopsy. I just have 2 stitches. So because of that, I was planning to go for a run, but I'm not allowed to run this weekend. Just keep sweat and water off the stitches. Get back into it next week.
Next week.
Out running again.
Okay.
And
hopefully it's
not skin cancer.
And hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
So that will take a few days or a week or so before you get the results back?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
So hopefully it's not, but if it is, it's early, which is the best case scenario. You catch it early and cut it out. Doesn't have any long-term effects on your health.
No. My sister-in-law just had her lymph nodes cut out because of that same thing. And hopefully that's all going to turn out good too. But yes, one more week of lockdown, and hopefully then we'll be out to get out and do a bit more running in the trails around Auckland. I'm really bored with the roads and the parks, because everyone's out there and it's packed when the weather's nice, that is.
Is that what the timeline is? 1 more week is?
Well, they make a call Monday week, I think, for the whole country, whether you guys go down to 1 and we go down to 2, or what happens. It's pretty sure it's about the 3rd or 4th of October.
Fingers crossed.
Okay. Do you know of any events that have been cancelled recently in Auckland, or in New Zealand, I should say? Because I think Spartan has moved again.
Yeah, Spartan's postponed again. We could easily talk a lot about that. It'd be great to put maybe a whole episode talking about the subject of Spartan and their postponements. But they have, let me bring up the news. Yeah, so last podcast we talked about upcoming events, and we talked about Spartan was scheduled for November. And I think both you and I aren't really surprised that they didn't go ahead with their November date, and they've postponed again. So they've postponed to May. And they actually had to shift the date. They postponed to the 14th and 15th of May 2022, which is basically 2 years after their original announcement of their event. This is the fourth time they've postponed the event. They've postponed for 2 years straight. And they announced the event, and then it actually clashed with Ultimate Athlete, which was being held about 200k away in Mount Maunganui. So Spartan actually came out later that day and shifted their dates back a week. So now Spartan Auckland is being held on the... Oh, sorry, it was scheduled for the 21st, 22nd of May, and they've shifted to the 14th and 15th of May. And Ultimate Athlete Wanganui is being held on the 21st of May, which I think event clashes aren't too uncommon.
No, and I know watching your Facebook feed the other day, I see you putting up a few there. But that the date that the Spartan has moved it to, I've got 2 other events that were postponed this year and have been moved to that same weekend. So I'm either going to be very worn out on the 16th, or I'm only going to do one, and hopefully the others will give me a credit or something like that. But
it's on the same date as an athlete now.
No, they're on the same day as they were the week before. There was a trail run and a Raygun that was moved from this year to next year. And they've got tentative dates of the 13th and 14th, or 14th and 15th of May.
I think that's the thing with this climate for events, right? It's just everything's shifting around. It's so hard to find a weekend that's free, and even if you do, events are going to shift, and they're going to shift to your day.
Yeah.
And I think the thing with the Ultimate Athlete and Spartan clash, though, was that they're the same category of event. They're both obstacle races, and they're both held close to each other. They weren't both in Auckland, but they are drivable. So they're both competing for that Auckland audience. So it is an awesome move that Spartan has realised that they were competing with another OCR event. And I think if you did hold 2 OCR events on the same date, that close to each other geographically, you're just going to divide the audience. There's people that don't choose which one to enter. And that's just
I think a lot of people would be. A lot of people will be in the same boat as us. Like you've got tickets to Spartan, and I've got tickets to Spartan. So I don't have tickets to the new UA one. So then it's do I put out more money for UA, or do I just stick with what I've already got with Spartan and go there? So.
Yeah, talking about that's the other part of this issue. Spartan's postponement. I guess first part of the issue was the clash of Ultimate Athlete, and the second part of the issue was Spartan's refund policy. But I could easily talk so much about that. But Spartan has a notorious refund policy. To talk briefly about it now, where they don't offer refunds unless the event is cancelled. They don't offer refunds for postponements. However, Spartan Auckland has postponed continuously for 2 years straight. So, at what point do they just need to cancel and then reschedule Spartan? Announce? I don't know if they're trying to avoid giving refunds, but it definitely appears like it from the outside that they're postponed for 2 years, and it looks like they're trying to avoid refunding anyone. But it could be. I mean, it's also a matter of Spartan's got deals with Auckland Tourism, right, and the venue, and so it could be the same issue where if they cancel, it affects their contract with all their sponsors and their partners in Auckland, so they have to keep postponing, and
and that we did sort of touch on that with our discussion with Martin, because he had to postpone or cancel his event last year, and the numbers are not looking good for this year. So if he does it again. But he only had resource consent to use that area for 3 years, and 2 of them have gone. Or he's used the first one, and then the next 2 have been postponed. So now he's in the quandary of, does he have to go back and reapply, or will he get them? And we'll cover that off when we chat to him in a little while. So being an event organiser in a pandemic is not something for the faint-hearted, I don't think.
No. Hopefully everyone can get out there and support events, though. I mean, event organisers are suffering, and if people sign up to Spartan, Ultimate Athlete, Wanaka Dash as well.
Yes, well, definitely the Wanaka Dash. I think Martin's got to make a call within the next 5 to 10 days about whether he's going to hold it or not. It's still a month away, but the organisation to run an event like that does take a while. So I know he does say that he wants to make a decision by the end of September, early October at the latest. So.
Which is one reason why we've reshuffled our podcast release schedule. Actually, you and I have recorded some other interviews upcoming for the podcast that are exciting, but we know Martin needs to make a decision on his event coming up, so we've reshuffled them to release this one first, so you guys can learn about the Wanaka Dash and see if you want to attend.
All right, results. Do you know any results? Do you want to bring any results up, or?
Yeah, we'll talk about it briefly before we cut to Martin's interview, but globally, the OCR World Championships and the Spartan North American Championships are taking place. They are both on the same date as well, which is both in the US. So that has divided the international and the US community. But we have some results in already, even though the event's taking place now, but we do have some results in for the OCR WC.
So for the 3K Pro Women, Lindsay Webster won that in 20:51. Ida Mahilda Rubens Stengard is in second. Rose Wetzel was in third for the 3K Inuit. You got the men's there?
Yeah, for the men's, VJ Jones came in first in the 3K Pro division. Ryan Kempson came in second, and Igor Belaslov came in third. And my results must be different than yours. I don't have times written here.
Oh, I've got hopefully the time. I clicked on the sort data tab. Okay. And the 15K Pro Women was the same two won that first and second. Lindsay and Ida was first and second. Lindsay was in 1 hour 56. Ida was 2 minutes behind. And then Chris Rodsky came in on spot on 2 hours. And Rose Wetzel come fourth. So third and fourth swap places in the 15K women's pro weave.
Nice. For the 15K Pro men's division, it's similar sort of result as well as the 3K. But both Ryan Kempson and Igor Belaslov have managed to retain podiums. So Ryan Kempson came first place, Igor Belaslov came second. VJ Jones got knocked out of the podium in the 15K, and instead Logan Broadbent has come third. Do you have the top three results? Do you have the full results?
I was going to say, Ryan Kempson's time was 1:35. Well, that must have been very close. 1:35.29, and Igor was 1:35.58. So like 30 seconds. And then 10 seconds later is Logan.
Oh, that's Jesus. That would have been exciting to watch.
Sorry, you asked for.
Yeah, I only have the top three results. Do you have the full list of? It'd be interesting to see where VJ Jones. Has he finished first in the 3K? He came fifth.
He came fifth in the 15 at 1 hour 39. So he was 4 minutes behind Ryan. And I'll throw out one of the Joel Paluski from Australia come in at 22nd. But all the rest were nearly all North Americans. Argentina, Canada. There's a Swiss one there, but that's about it.
Nice. That's just the pro results. The full results of age groups and the other categories are online. And at the time we're recording this podcast, we're still waiting for results from the 100 meter and the team relay. Only the 3K and the 15K have taken place at this point.
And also, what else is happening is the Spartan World Championships are on, but we don't have any results for that either.
Yeah, we'll take a look for next episode, and we'll fill everyone in for the news on that in the next podcast.
Shall we cut to our interview with Martin?
Yeah, let's do it. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so we got a few questions for you, actually. You're involved in a few aspects of OCR. But I was thinking before we get into your endeavours in OCR to learn a little bit about your background. I know you did athletics. You've come from that background.
Yes, I suppose a short history around me was always been sports orientated from a young kid all the way through. So did a lot of team sports growing up, from being made to play soccer for 2 years before I was allowed to play rugby. That was Dad's rule. Cricket, basketball, hockey, league, tennis, gymnastics. So I did quite a lot of stuff as a young kid, and then I suppose just when I was starting to really enjoy rugby, I sort of came to the realisation that my size wasn't suiting the forward packs of New Zealand back in those days. I was small but very fast and could read the game quite well, so I decided that I'd move into running. So I transitioned. I did a year of running and rugby. So Saturday mornings I'd go out to an 8-mile run, then go play 80 minutes of rugby in the afternoon. Depending on the intensity of the game, the last 10 minutes was sometimes a bit of a challenge. And then after a year, that was when I decided, okay, I'm not sort of going to get to the All Black level because I'm not picking guys like they wanted big forwards, not small forwards. And so I just stepped into running, and it grew from there. And being in the Air Force, sports is a big part of life in the services. So running became my main priority, and it eventually led to joining running clubs in Christchurch and then eventually Auckland, and a short stint in Paraparaumu with Kapiti Harriers there. But I was what you call a late bloomer for running, because most kids start their running careers as 13 or younger, and then as they get to 17, 18, the boys will either find alcohol and girls or they'll keep going. So I was a sort of a late starter, so I was behind the ball, but I still managed to get a good 20 plus years of competitive running into me. And towards the end of that, Spartan appeared. I was in Australia at the time, spent 22 years in Australia in Brisbane. And so I thought, oh, that sounds like a good thing to do, because by then I'd sort of left aviation and I was in the fitness industry. And it sort of gelled with me, the fact that you can go do gym work and go and run and combine them in obstacle course running. So I got hooked on that through Spartan, and I did about 5 events over there, plus a Tough Mother, which, Tough Mother was good, but it wasn't tough enough, really. It was a lot of mud. The obstacles were good. I've got no idea why you have to try and run through electrical charges. I did get zapped a couple of times, and they hit me on the bone, and boy, they were painful. I wasn't worried about it, but it was just not nice.
No.
So then I thought, no, I quite like the combining of gym work and running. And so when I came back to New Zealand about 5 years ago, there wasn't much happening in New Zealand. I think at the time, Spartan were promising to come over. They tried a couple of times. They did eventually get over, but it sort of took a while. I don't know what the hurdles were. I think it's more the logistics they would have had getting over. And I was sort of keen, because there was nothing down around our way down here in Wanaka that sort of offered that sort of opportunity. And I sort of, in the process of setting up, that's when I found out about Greg later with Wairua Warriors. So I had a chat with him and a talk, and I was quite surprised. I mean, he'd been running for about 4 years by then, 5 years. So he did explain sort of getting that up and running would take quite some time, and he's right. And in the current situation we have with all these lockdowns, it's proven a real challenge to get anything new up and running because of the uncertainty around whether events will go ahead or not. But I was definitely sold on getting obstacle course running happening down here with an event of some sorts. And then, of course, lo and behold, bump into Max on the interweb, and eventually, I think it was about November last year, I think Max sort of put a thing up on Facebook hinting about starting an association, and I quickly jumped on that, and it snowballed, and I think early this year we had enough to sort of get a committee, and we got the ball rolling, and now we've got an association in New Zealand to help grow and foster athletes in the world of obstacle course running. So it's still a challenge for me, because I still enjoy running and doing that, but with age, as you know, Steve, you're not as keen to go out on wet, cold, windy days, unless there's a good reason to do it, like a competition. I definitely find winter's very hard on my body. I find it very hard with the circulation issues to get out there and run, but I still do it. It's a real challenge. So that's sort of it in a nutshell with that. I enjoy what I did with running. I had some good successes. I was down below 32 minutes for 10K. I didn't quite break the 71-minute barrier for half marathons, but I was there. But in terms of being elite, I was probably about 3 or 4 minutes off that sort of level. And when I look at athletes who purely concentrate on running, I almost feel sorry for them now, because I feel like any sport, if you do it regularly, it becomes institutionalized and your body adapts, and eventually you start look at top runners, they're like sardines, and I didn't want to sort of get to that stage. And I had lots of friends who were obsessed with running, and it was always mileage, and if they missed out, they were always trying to find out ways to sort of make up for what they lost, whereas I was sort of the opposite. I didn't let it worry me. I said, actually, the body actually needs a rest. So for years, I said I took a day off, and I think that's what got me through my running career with very few injuries at all compared to some of my mates. Of course, come to obstacle running, well, you never know what you're going to get, and I've rolled my ankle, I've pulled muscles, but you sort of expect that, and it's sort of like a bit of pride you wear it. You completed it, but you completed it with a ankle twice the size of the other one, or an arm that you can't lift above your shoulder because you've wrenched it from doing all your crawls and holding yourself up fences. So I think that's what makes obstacle course running so attractive to me. It challenges you a lot more mentally and physically, and overall I think it makes people understand their bodies a bit more and the limits they can go to. So before I start getting lost in more talk like that, I'll stop that, and we'll head to what other questions you might have about me.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, feel free to keep talking about it, what we want to hear about. But yeah, for questions, I guess, so your event, the Wanaka Dash, so what year is it now? Is it the second? Second time?
This would have been the third year. My first go at sort of gauging whether it would work was probably in 2017, and I did a very short course out at Waterfall Creek. It was basically a 400-metre circuit, which had them run about waist deep in the lake for about 50 metres. Then they'd come up a slight hill, do a crawl. Then they'd come back to the main area at the start where there were 8 stations, and they're all numbered. So I'd start the people on that station. They wouldn't do it. They say, "Radio, this is where when you come back, you're going to be doing this exercise," and then do a loop, come back, do the next exercise, and move around. So it was a bit like what Obstacle Fit's basically going to do. if you'd heard outdoors, where you'd be running about 400 metres. And that went over quite well. So then I had to sort of try and find somewhere where I could hold it, and that was the hard thing, locating a landowner that would be obliging. And I eventually did in late 2018 with John McRae out at Glendhu Bay Station. And at that time, he was starting to look for other ways to run the farm rather than as a farm, because he said to me, he says, you spend 100,000 to make 30,000 on a farm. So he had his wedding venue, but he was looking at other events. So he had the Tuki Tuki Festival every 2 years, and then he managed to start building a mountain bike trail for Bike Wanaka. So he's got a quite a good bike trail, several different lengths and difficulties of degree running out there. And he was quite keen for my event to become part of his setup out there. And then he was looking for a third one, and that naturally came around with the pressure on Challenge Wanaka with the triathlon. A lot of folk would complain about the town being shut down and blocked, so it's moved out there. So he's sort of got the three wants. Now he wants to sort of build those so that it becomes a destination for sort of sporting events. That's his idea. So he may eventually grow out to others. My case, I mean, the 2019, it was the first year, and it was a nervous thing because there was very little money to go and put in a huge amount of technical obstacles, and there was a large single loop that we set up, and probably the hardest one there was probably things like the bucket carry. There are a lot of short water runs, tyre squats, tyre drags, concrete block drag, and a number of crawls. And of course, I think the bulk of the people who came were sort of first timers to it, who were quite keen to do something new. And yeah, I didn't get it right, and the feedback, I was expecting a lot of bad feedback, but bad feedback to me is good feedback. It showed me where I had to improve. And so I set about improving that, and of course COVID completely destroyed it in 2019. Oh, sorry, 2020.
Yeah.
So that's when getting in with Max and starting the association here in New Zealand, we sort of got a lot of good ideas and work from Ian from FISO, and from that I sort of took on some of their ideas to redesign and redevelop the course so it would sort of mimic how they run their courses and the number of obstacles they have. And then I was able to start looking at doing a combination of technical and non-technical ones so that you could still get a lot of people who are new to it and wouldn't be put off by having everything being too technical.
So you are gonna, I know you've talked about bringing in internationally from FISO, they got this idea of a clover leaf shape for a course. Is that something you are going to be introducing to the Wanaka Dash?
Yes, well, that was set up for this year. I put the map out, and there were basically 3 out and back legs that sort of brought everybody back to the start area so that they could see them doing 1, 2, 3, about 4 or 5 obstacles right in front of them. And if they wanted to see some others, they could sort of walk up to the top of the course and see some of the other ones. So the back part of the course, out the back, there are less obstacles going to get placed out there. There'd be a long crawl, probably a bit of a water run, and a tyre gauntlet, which instead of being on flat, I was going to put on an uphill slope to make it harder to lift your knees higher and run up through the tyres.
Nice.
And also there was going to be a short set of my version of monkey bars, which was going to be 2 bars parallel to each other with rather thick dowel each side of the 100 by 100. So, and it was over water. So to be doing that over water, but it was only going to be about 4.8 meters long. So with the natural sort of swing with an arm, it worked out you're only probably going to have about 6 handles to sort of grab hold of. But at least it was going to give them a bit of a challenge, and if they slipped, they just land in the water, which would either be, I think one end was about knee deep, the other would have been about waist deep.
That sounds cool.
And then the rest of it was just running through a bit of thick bush and then coming back up onto the top plateau, where there were 2 1.2 metre wall climbs, so they're easy to sort of vault over. The concrete drag was up there as well. And the other ones on the third and final loop, you would have had the inverted wall climb, under overs and a balance walk, and then you'd come back down to the main area, and the obstacle there was a platform that to finish you run over the top, but the others would be crawling underneath while they're heading out to do the last loop. That was the idea of the and the other one was just using Toblerones, so that when they started, they'd jump the Toblerones. When they come back, they'd crawl through it to head back out to the other cloverleaf. And the other big obstacle they had back at the start finish line was going to be the 2.4 metre wall climb.
Nice.
I was pretty pumped about and excited, but this lockdown, I was supposed to start building them in September, at the start of September. Nothing for 4 weeks, and then of course all the building supply shortages start to pop up, and I'm going, I need a lot of that ply, and I don't think there's going to be much ply around to sort of build what I want. So a big challenge.
So from that, I'm taking it that the chances of Wanaka Dash going ahead this year is going to be very slim?
Yes, unfortunately. The entries have basically dried up, although I got a team of 3 into this afternoon. So we're still looking at, it's still under 50 at the moment, and it's just not viable.
Oh,
yeah. It has to be at least another 150 to make it viable, and in a short space of time. I think that'd be a big ask. It could be a miracle, but if we jump to level 1 this week for everybody, there were inquiries from Auckland asking, and I said, yes, you can, but you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is something. So if you did get the numbers, you would go ahead under level 2. It's still operational.
Level 2 is still hard because they're still asking you for 100 people. I think even with outdoors, although being an obstacle and having staggered starts, as long as you didn't have them all staying hanging around afterwards,
that's
you probably could handle it. But that's just the issue. So I think my waves are waves of 40, so it would have been okay. It's just how people would feel comfortable wise around that. Some people just aren't comfortable these days at all getting close to anybody, whereas others don't seem to mind. But it's going to be challenging for any sort of event between now and the end of the year, I believe. I know there's people are already booked to go to concerts, and they haven't said they're cancelled yet, but we know for sure they're not going to go ahead because some of these groups are coming down from the States. We're going to do Australia and New Zealand. Well, they can't get into Australia, so they wouldn't come to New Zealand because it just wouldn't be financially viable.
And the chances of getting into New Zealand are getting very, very slim. Me and my wife have been trying to get MIQ. We'd like to go back to Oz for Christmas, but I don't know if you've seen the news the other day, but 3,000 spots and 36,000 people put in for it. So
I think they're underestimating, and I don't think they have got it right. But how can you get it right is sort of hard to say. If you know it's going to be around for a long time, I think the only solution would be for the government to do what they've done in Australia and actually build dedicated facilities that can actually cope with more people. And have them out of the cities a little bit, so that they're not going to be an issue like some of the hotels have been, where the people escape and then all transmission jumps or whatever. So, yeah, challenging times for them. And as I say, it'd be very disheartening for a lot of the Kiwis who are still trying to get home because of COVID. And as you say, it's still a lottery. At least they don't have to sit there.
Yeah.
They know to go there and go and just wait. So, yeah.
Yep, it's going to be around for a little while longer, I think. So, getting back to some of your obstacle course, you did Spartan in Australia. Have you done other obstacle courses here in New Zealand or any other overseas ones?
No, as I said, I did Tough Mudder in Brisbane as well. Did that with a group of guys, and it was great fun. I enjoyed getting muddy and crawling through stuff like that. And I think the only technical one I avoided was the ski ramp. We had to run and get up this big curve thing. I thought, I've got a marathon in France to do in 2 weeks' time. I don't want to run up there and do a hamstring or something while I'm. So that was the only one I avoided, just for the fact that I didn't want to get myself injured. But I did get up to Wairua Warriors in Nelson this year. And even though they only had the one distance and they came close to cancelling, I'm glad it went ahead because the experience was great. I says, this is a typical New Zealand running conditions that you couldn't get in any other country. They were difficult. And I mean, I've done a few in Australia, but the terrain was nowhere as difficult and steep as what they had up there in Nelson. And I must admit, when that central area where all the obstacles or the main obstacles were located, that was very energy zapping, very energy zapping. I was sort of looking for a longer run to sort of get a bit of a recovery, but I think that's what made it even better. I would have hated to have seen what the climb was for the 12K they normally have as well, because that climb they had for the first part, that was pretty monstrous. It was pretty tough on my body anyway. But yeah, as I say, I think they've got it right there. It's definitely what you'd call in New Zealand. It's got its own unique standpoint for New Zealand. I think the only thing I found that if they were to have that as a big billing race like something like UA, I think they would have to sort of negate that channel run because it was single file. You couldn't pass anybody. So if you got stuck there, by the time you got out the end, like I did, everybody was gone. They were off with the bags and up over the hill and gone. But yeah, for the rest of it, I reckon the course was pretty up there, and I'd say that's a sort of standard of toughness and technicalities that you need if you're going to want to sort of qualify for something overseas. It needs to be of that extent because I think you will find them overseas. There'll be some countries that can put on similar style terrain that makes it extremely hard on the body from the running side and not just the obstacle side. I think when you get a course that tests people's running and stamina with strength and everything, I think that's when you sort of get it right. I think a lot of courses we may get in the early days here when we get more on will be a mix of like UA, running wise, not as hard or as challenging, but the obstacles, I think you said there were a mix. Some didn't find them too difficult either. So I think getting that combination right is where you'll be able to, the associations will be able to sort of decide, okay, we're going to use those for qualifying because it meets a certain level of difficulty with running and a certain level of difficulty with the obstacles. You can't just have one or the other and say you can qualify using that because you might get to that world event and the terrain absolutely stuffs you, but you've been doing easy running courses. So,
especially in New Zealand, such a shame not to use all the hills and the trails and the rugged terrain that we have in New Zealand. It's awesome for obstacle races to incorporate the big hill climbs and the technical tracks, and as well as the obstacles. Warrior does a good job of that.
Yeah, and I sort of came across that, especially in the Air Force, when we used to go to services, then into services cross countries. They picked farms that had testing hills and climbs and everything. There were very few that were flat, or if they were, they had a hill that was a monster in the middle that would stuff you anyway, so that you'd have just enough time to recover, to come around and have to go up the hill again and get buggered again before you came back down. So, you're definitely right. We do have the terrain that could make for some great courses, whether it's adventure running, as you say, or whatever.
So have you dabbled in adventure races, or have you been in that part of the...
No, and I think in my late stage life now, I don't think I'd actually survive one. I think now even the thought of doing a marathon would be extremely hard, and I think that's just the nature of life as you get on, and also when you live in an area where you don't have much in the scene for that sort of sport, for running, you only have one or two a year, and you go, okay, if I've got to keep this up, then I've got to either go up to Christchurch, go up there, or fly up to the North Island, and I mean that can become a bit of an expense really these days. So
when and if you're allowed to fly.
Well, that's right. Yeah, if you can fly. Yeah, I think they'll be doing swabs if you're going to go between regions, just to make sure you're not carrying anything there. So, but then again, they've struggled too. That's why flights are fewer, so airfares have gone up, and when they do open up internationally, there'll be fewer flying because the fares will be extremely high as well. So.
And on that too, like I think the international flights or business flights and all that will dry up a lot more, because people now realise that you can do just as well. And a lot of your business stuff, the people we deal with, and we've got in that share the offices with us, they are international. They're called Remarkable Foods. They buy food products from all over the world, and it's one of the things David said is there's no more going on 3 and 5 week. Flying around Asia and the United States buying stuff. He knows he can do it reasonably well online. So I think flights are going to take a long time before they ever get back, and I don't think they'll ever get back as a business sort of flights.
No,
currently had.
Yeah, and they were the backbone of allowing people to get the cheaper flights in cattle class.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
We might all be wrong. You know.
Oh, yeah.
We'll wait and see.
So, what other questions did we have?
Yeah, I was wanting to ask about, the Wairua Warrior. I went and did that as well with you, and it was an awesome experience. Yeah. But it was brutal, 30 burpees for failing obstacles.
That was brutal.
Spartan style penalty.
Brutal enough doing 15 from not being an elite runner.
But what's the penalty at Wanaka Dash? Is there an obstacle failure penalty?
Not at this stage, because I think that the feedback I got, that sort of put off a lot of the newbies and grassroots people, that they didn't want to sort of have to do a penalty. I think eventually, if it sort of gets incorporated into the event, it'll be because I've separated it and you have an elite field who go separately, and like they did at UA, they will be under those rules where there'll be penalties if they don't do, or if they fail or whatever. So people have the choice. They can decide whether they want to compete in the elite field, or they can just join in the general public space and go and have fun and enjoy themselves and learn how to do obstacles as part of a team, and then decide, I could do this on my own, or no, I prefer teams. And I think, as we were discussing the other night, I think that could be the backbone of building the sport in New Zealand, encouraging teams, which is what I'm doing with the Wanaka Dash. I've been encouraging people to enter as a team so they can have more fun. I tell them you're allowed to help each other at the obstacles, and no penalties. So
that certainly was a big factor at UA, I think, wasn't it, Max? That there was a fair few. There seemed to be more teams, people in the teams events than in just the elites or the normal open waves. There did seem to be a large amount of team participation.
Quite a few teams, yeah. But obstacle racing in general is just so fun to do with others. It's so.
I know I've done them.
It's so like, yeah.
I've done them on my own. Done them on my own, and you sort of look at the others all having fun. You're going, oh shit, and you come to this obstacle and going, oh, if I was with a team, be able to help me with this one. So you have a go and you stuff yourself. You get over and you go, holy hell, I've used a lot of energy now. I've got to recover for the next one. But as I watch the sport grow in Australia, because initially it was only down in Melbourne, so you'd have to travel down to Melbourne to do it. Then it sort of came up to Sydney, and then finally they came up to Brisbane. And I think the first time I did that one with them, I think there was somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 doing it.
These were the Spartan races?
Yeah, the Spartan race. And by the time I'd done 3 more out there, the numbers had grown to about 6,000 plus.
So which one was this?
This was, I've done the sprint twice, I've done the super twice, and I've done the beast once.
Oh, I know. Which race? The Sunshine Coast or the...
This was the one they held at the back of Brisbane, round towards Amberley.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, and they set up they would always set up a tent city too. So if you didn't have accommodation, you could actually pay to stay there in the tents, which is why I liked picking Glendew Bay. You got the motor camp right across the road. So if you wanted to stay close, they could have somewhere cheap and close to go to.
Well, we did last year. We had a camper van and everything, and then it all got cancelled.
Yeah, and what I noticed was the type of people doing Spartan at that stage then was there were a large amount of females, but also large amounts of teams more than individuals. So I sort of managed to con a mate into it, so we sort of do it as teams. But some of the marshals were quite good, so that we're at something like the Herculean hoist, which you look at it, the kettlebell, and you go, oh, that's only 28 kilos. That's going to be easy to hoist. But when you're hoisting it vertically through probably close to 15 meters, it feels like it's more than 100 kilos. And to get it started, there's nothing to help you get it started. Like the first year, there was a knot, so you could use the knot. But then after that, you just sort of, once you got it past head height, it was fine. But to get it past head height, you use so much energy and strength. So when I was struggling there, I looked at this guy who was single and says, we sort of looked at each other, and the marshal said, look, if you're part of a team, you can help each other. So I said to him, we're part of a team, okay? So we both helped each other hoist it up, and then we carried on. So I think that's what is making it so big. They have so many teams competing, and the number of individuals are, as you say, probably just the elite runners who are quite happy and capable of going out and doing it on their own.
I have to admit, one of the best Spartans I did was the Melbourne Stadium one in the MCG.
Oh, yes.
I did that with friends, and that was good because it was just loops. They had nearly all the obstacles were around the centre area, and you just ran out and do a little thing. Some of the carries were a bit further away, but it was really a team building one. There's a couple of walls where you needed to be in a team,
right,
to get over.
Yeah.
They were 12, 14 foot high, so you needed a team to get.
Yeah, I think they did actually have one in Brisbane. I never went to it. They were setting it up at Suncorp. I think the intense part with those type of events is the last 300 meters. Is they have obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, and it just smashes you as you're coming. You're coming to the finish, and in the last 300 meters, you've got to do, I don't know, 4, 5, maybe 6 obstacles, which are upper body strength, and you just sort of, yeah.
Yep.
Pretty amazing.
5 or 6 in the last 200 metres in the one I did in Melbourne.
Yeah.
There was a cargo net, and then there was a wall, and then there was a crawl, and the spear throw, and the monkey bars were all
these
little loops you did and come back.
Tell you what, those cargo nets weigh a ton. I think when we first came across them, when they finally added them to the Brisbane events, we got into I tried to lift them. Holy hell, you got to get under this and crawl through it. But by then, others had arrived, and we worked out a tunnelling system. So the first person went in with the head down, shoulders, and sort of bent over, and you go between his legs, stand up, and the next person. So you got through that way. So I'd hate to think how the elites managed to lift it. You would have had to have crawled flat on the ground and had your head down so you don't rip your hair out. And they had two of them. No, at one stage there were three, one after the other. There was about 10 metres between each one in a little triangle. You had to go through three cargo nets. And, the energy doing that. I thought, this will be easy, but no. So they've worked it out well.
I think one of the best things about OCR, in my opinion, are those moments you were just talking about where, the cargo net, and then what we were talking about before, was the Hercules hoist, where someone came along, you're like, we're in a team. But those moments where you just connect with someone out on the course, to overcome obstacles, or they help you, or you help them, or you have that little bonding moment. Those little like snapshots of
and I think
on the course is awesome.
That's another big plus that I've taken from Spartan. It's about the camaraderie, and they say if you see someone out there struggling, you can stop and help them. I mean, the elites probably don't. They probably just go through so fast. They just sort of, it doesn't occur to them.
You're not allowed to in the elites.
Yeah, but for,
you have to be.
For the general Joe blogs, it's about helping your fellow athlete if they're struggling, and that's the other key one I put into my event as well. If you're an individual and struggling, keep an eye out for someone who is struggling and help them. Yeah.
What I reckon would be cool to see is more like Tough Mudder style obstacles come to events as well. Like Tough Mudder, how they got the I can't remember any of the names of them, but there's the half pipe that you run up, but the top of the half pipe is curved. you can't actually run up and grab it.
No, you got to.
What you need to do is run up and jump and leap. You have to run up and grab someone's hand.
If you're the first person there, you got to get up there yourself. So you got to run and leap and grab and pull yourself up.
I think that one does sort of rely. I guess some of the Tough Mudder ones rely on constant numbers. Is the problem? Not work on other events.
Yeah, and
they have
a few others, like they had a big climbing wall. So you climbed up the wall, but when you got to the top, you had to jump down to a water pit, which was even further down than the climb was on the other side. So you get up there and you sort of have a few minutes going, oh shit, keep my head around this. Then you go, okay, just jump. And it's just that height thing, because you're standing. It's like when you're on the roof of a house. When you look up, it's not that high, but when you stand on the roof, you go, oh shit, it's actually higher than I thought. It's just an optical illusion, and the brain plays with it. And another one they had was sort of channels with bars over them, and you actually had to go on backwards and lie in the water and crawl yourself along. And people who have anything like claustrophobia or fear of closed spaces, that is a real tough one to get over. And dark tunnels with muddy water, you sort of, it's half full, so you've got to sort of almost go under before you sort of get up, and then you go, okay, where's the light? Oh, there it is, because it actually bends up. I think they did one with a 90-degree bend. It went in, did a right-hand turn, then did a left-hand turn. So you're in pitch black for, almost half of the thing, going, where the hell am I going? So
some of them, I don't know how they'd get away nowadays. I can remember doing a couple, and one of the worst ones was, it was a sewage pipe, and I don't know, 400 metres. My shoulders were touching both sides of it, and you had to swim through it. It was completely underwater for, I don't know, 6 metres, 5 metres.
Yeah.
And then they had the same pipe, but it was in a zigzaggy shape, and they had holes drilled in it, and they were pumping smoke in there, and their smoking generator was a little Honda generator that had a exhaust pipe run into it, and they were dripping oil onto that. That was their smoking generator.
How can you breathe? I can't see. I can't breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. I was just trying to think of one other one they did there at Tough Mudder that I thought you sort of really couldn't do these days for some things, but
hopefully safety's moved on.
I think that electric shock. Yeah, I think that for safety reasons they might.
They still use it though. Well,
They
Tough Girl does.
Yeah. Tough Guy Girl has electric shocks. Yeah. Well, they don't go off anywhere near as often as Tough Mudder.
Yeah.
Like I go through the Tough Guy and Gal things and don't get shocked.
Yeah,
going through Tough Mudder.
I think it's just luck because they can only have certain ones on because some of them can be so dense that if you had them all switched on, it'd be like getting tasered. You'd actually freeze and sit there and yeah. Right.
There's a new Tough Mudder one I haven't done. I don't know when it came out. I've just seen videos online. It'd be really cool outside of a Tough Mudder context, actually, like maybe for the dash. But it's like a sloped pyramid along wooden structure, sloped pyramid. It's on springs, so it wobbles back and forth. But you get two people, one on either side, and you have to traverse along it. But there's no handholds, so your feet are on it, and the only way to go is to hold the hands of someone else, and you need to move at the same time. If you move out of order, it wobbles too much and you fall off. So you got to work with someone and do teamwork the whole way along this thing. And it looks awesome. Like I think that's a perfect obstacle where it's physically hard and it makes you do teamwork. And if you're in a team, it's good, or it makes you connect with a random stranger. And just looking at YouTube videos on that, it's awesome.
So do they need a person on each side of it? Do they to stop it?
Yeah. You can't. Yeah, one person would.
Can't do it.
Yeah, so you got to balance the weight as well. So if you lean too far one way, you'd fall off.
Okay.
If you moved at the wrong time, it'll wobble too much, and if you let go of your hands, you'd both fall off. And it's a really good obstacle design.
Maybe we're going to find people who try to build obstacles that actually make people fail. They'll be looking for. Okay, that wasn't hard enough. How can we make them fail? Yeah.
Yes.
No, it would be good. I mean, with hopefully with next year, I've got to sort of have another chat with QLDC here because of consent. I've lost 2 years of my 3-year consent, so I might sort of have to plead. Am I able to sort of get that given back to me in kind, or is that it? I've lost it. Now you have to reapply and get your consent all over again. Because I know there's certain things they don't tell you, and I found out a year after I did mine that if you have less than 500 in your event, you don't actually need a consent. You go, why don't they tell me that? So you find these things out, later on. It didn't worry me because I think doing it that way, I feel is right. I think you should have the consent regardless. And I'll go through that process next year, and I can probably look at applying through them again. They have a funding thing that you can use that purely just to get things like consent, and that might cover that process again, like I managed to get. So I'll be chasing it up probably towards the end of this year. Once everything's,
we'll be back for next year.
Yeah,
if you go ahead this year, or even if you have to cancel this year, you'll be back next year, no matter what.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I'd like to sort of bring in changes so that we have a definite kids wave. They might do, say, maybe 1 or 2 of the clover leaves rather than the full 5K, depending on their age and that. You might say, right, kids under this age, we're just doing the first clover leaf. The next age group can do 2, and anyone, say, probably from 15 to 17 can do the 3. I'd like to see if I could probably also develop a 100 metre. There's plenty of space for it there, and just have it as a demo and say anybody wants to have a go at doing 100 metres, throw a gold coin in the cap over there and away you go.
Would
And
the idea be to make it more obstacle dense? The
Yeah,
obstacles back to back.
yeah, just make it quite dense.
I'd love to see that. I'd love for the short course OCR to come to New Zealand.
And I think that way it might sort of help attract another type of athlete, as Ian says. It'll be sprinters.
And me coming from parkour when I was young, like you get parkour people who they're fought over 5K is just ridiculous. but 100 meters, dense obstacles, like you get those sort of people, or you get sprinters, or you may get, I don't know, gymnasts or something who they know how to use their body on obstacles, but they can't run. But a short course might appeal to those sort of people, or CrossFitters, CrossFitters who
explosive but short, short endurance.
Yeah.
So lots of options to sort of think about, and I suppose the first process will be looking at the consent and what will be involved. I think if I do it, I'll be probably looking for a 10-year one this time rather than 3 years, and hopefully eventually if it does get up and running, I can then sort of pass it on to someone who's keen to sort of carry it on, and I can sort of step back and go, okay, I'll help, I'll consult and do that, and focus more on sort of building the athletes in the association, trying to get more grassroots in and encourage people that it's not hard. It can be fun, and just like any sport, you'll have the serious people, but you'll have the ones who are there basically just for the experience and to say, look, I did this, why don't you come and do this? And they challenge their mates and they get more people come in as teams. It'll be a slow process, and it always will be with the sport. I think Greg pointed that out to me prior to me starting doing the Wanaka Dash. He says it's a slow process. It took them that 4 to 6 years to get to where they were and to the level they're doing.
So, Martin, well, thank you for that. Where can our listeners find you? What's your social media, book of faces, and all that sort of stuff?
The Wanaka Titans page is sort of on its own. It's actually done through my main Multi Peak Fitness one, but you can set up separate accounts with Facebook. So if you just punch in Wanaka Titans, it'll come up and you'll be able to sort of catch up with what's happening there. It has been a bit quiet on there because I'm not sure what to put out there to tell people. It's just going, what can you tell them? Because you're still holding out hope that something might happen, and you don't want to sort of put a dampener in there to people go, oh, if that's going to happen, I won't enter. So we'll just wait and see. But yeah, they can check that out on the Wanaka Titans Facebook page.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
That's right, guys. Thank you very much.